After almost 10 years, one of the most beloved drum creation tools finally gets a paint job, some badly needed workflow enhancements, and some new features. And the best part is, it's a free update. Hey guys, it's Steve from Featherlight Studio, and XLN Audio has just released a brand new update to its beloved drum creation tool, Addictive Drums 2. Now this takes it up to version 2.5 and adds some badly needed workflow enhancements as well as some new features and a reskin of really the entire overall interface and some cool new ways to do stuff as well. Addictive Drums 2 has been our studio workhorse and creation tool, especially for any kind of, percussion and drums related duties in what seems like forever, because it's really been forever. Over 10 years now since Addictive 2 has been released, and it's already got a very mature and well-established ad pack drum sample library, as well as a ton of beat ad packs via MIDI. And when you consider what the Beat Designer tool can do to those existing MIDI drum packs, it makes those things super creative and powerful, and they cover a ton of ground. So let's dive in and find out a bit more about XLN Audio's 2.5 update to its venerable drum production suite, Addictive Drums 2. And the best part is, it's free to existing users. In addition to adding new functions like the new trigger gate feature in the effects section and changes to the beat transformer, the new boost comp feature, and a brand new EQ design. First up is the interface, and XLN Audio's done a lot of work here. It's not just a reskin or a paint job, they've really made some workflow enhancements. Things are clearer, they're easier to understand, they're easier to get to certain things or use or bind, or categorize certain things. So overall, it's a joy to use because it's a lot easier, I think, when you're in that kind of creative zone and you don't want to get lost in the tech zone. The new changes to the graphical user interface are a welcome addition. And one of the first and biggest changes, I think, is if you click over here to the settings menu, we have a new menu item here. And finally, after all this time, we have the ability to scale the interface. We can work in an HD environment and scale this way down, or if we're working in a much larger environment, 1440 or even 4K, especially in a 4K environment. This is such a big deal. If we're working in a really large 4K environment, this was always just absolutely tiny, so we can get all the way up to 200%, or we can reduce it all the way to 50% if we're working in an HD environment, for example. So welcome additions here by far. This just makes a huge difference just working with the plugin. Both the old gallery and explore pages have been merged into a much more streamlined browser interface. This makes auditioning all the kits that are currently in your library, as well as your own personal kits, much easier to find. The new browser gives us our kit thumbnails on the left-hand side, much easier to step through things and know where you are. And then we can, of course, audition all of the individual patches and tweak them even more so on the right. I do like the fact that XLN Audio didn't completely overhaul the entire interface. Most of the controls still operate in familiar ways. You can still get to things and audition things the way you used to be able to. They just work a little better and the workflow is a little smoother. Addictive Drums 2 has been out for a long time, and most of us have well-established workflows. So that means we don't have to learn a brand new plugin from the ground up. Everything is pretty close to where it used to be. It just works a little smoother, and we have all of this new workflow and streamlined capability without having to learn a brand new plugin. The kit page gets an overhaul as well. It's a little bit larger overall than the older version of it. Mostly a reskin, but it is a lot easier to see things at a glance. The contrast and things are quite a bit brighter and easier to see. The old design was fine, and I think it was mostly just because we were all used to it, but it was difficult to see like the difference between the LED meters and the fader positions, just because it was all a bit jumbled. Things are a bit brighter and a bit higher contrast, so a much cleaner overall design. And the menu bar across the top is a bit more streamlined now. The play and sync features are all finally located in the same spot, so a little faster workflow overall. The new edit page gets similar functions as well and a bright new facelift. The old interface was getting a bit jumbled and hard to see in terms of just its contrast levels and things. This new one is much brighter, and some absolutely wonderful new additions and features we'll talk about here in a minute, including the new compressor boost mode and a brand new EQ to play with that is so much nicer and more intuitive to use than the old one. It's the same story with the effects page, a brighter, more streamlined overall workflow and interface. Things are a bit easier to get around on, and a newer and redesigned EQ section, but we have some new features we'll talk a bit more about here in a second with the new trigger and gate sections of each one of the new effects. This is a really exciting new addition, and lots of creative options can be had here. Both the Beats page and the Beat Transformer page and their associated tabs have been combined into a much more unified and streamlined workflow, much easier to get around, audition things. The same idea with the old gallery and explore pages are used here, where we can explore all of our beat sections in the left-hand side with the thumbnails and then go through the individual beats here. And once those beats are selected, all of the power and control and creative possibility of the Beat Transformer can be applied to them, which is extensive. That's a video for a totally different time here. But for those that are used to using this, this is a powerful and really creative tool. Next up is the boost mode in the compressor section. And this allows you to make some pretty surgical changes late in the mix. You can have your entire performance dialed in and at the end go, God, I really need a little bit more punch from that snare, or I really need a little bit more, cut or guts or punch from those toms, and be able to go in and just dial in that part of it without really affecting the entire kit. In this next example, we're going to be using the new features in our compression and distortion sections to help bring out the snare and the kick in this aggressive rock groove. Since the groove has already been completed and the drums are already finished, we just need a little bit more punch out of both the kick and snare. Next up is what I think is the showstopper of the improvements, and that is the new EQ section. Finally, we have a working RTA, but more importantly, the bands themselves, the additional bands, and the way they behave are a lot more sensible. They make a lot more sense from just a standard digital EQ point of view. The old one kind of behaved in some odd sort of ways that made it difficult to dial in exactly the sound you were after. This new style allows you a lot more precision when it comes to equalizing your finished kit piece result. The newly redesigned EQ inside of Addictive Drums 2.5 is just a joy to work with, and compared to the old one, which was kind of clunky and problematic, we finally have a working RTA. And that might seem like a small thing, but it's just an indispensable tool in so many other parts of the DAW and in modern day plugins. It makes it really so much easier to zero in on surgical problems and things like that. So the working RTA, along with the newly designed nodes and expanded bands, make all the difference in the world when you're really trying to hone in on crafting and sculpting a particular kit piece sound. overall, the streamlined design and new overhaul makes it much easier to work with and much easier to get the sound that you're after for sure. If I had any one sort of con or wish list about it at all, it would be that the overall EQ had a click to reset. So you could flatten out the EQ at the click of a button, and also to be able to, you know, click and zero each one of the bands. This would make it a little faster when you're just working in a hurry and you're trying to dial in a sound. But overall, definitely a welcome change. The new trigger and gate sections of the effects is really cool and a welcome addition for sure, because you can really mangle your audio without necessarily having to change your MIDI information. This is really important if you want to try a bunch of different styles out without altering the MIDI track itself. In this first example, we'll start out with one of the grooves off of our beats page. And we'll sync it up with our DAW, and we'll start with the threshold sliders up here. As we drop them, each one of these channels will start to become more and more affected by the trigger gate feature. We can also raise the overall noise floor if we want all of the kit to be included in that as well. We got some sync and release knobs here to play with, and we'll start with a basic plate reverb and just start bringing the send up. Then we'll need to start dropping the snare channel threshold slider so that those velocities are included in the gate and trigger function. From here, we can start playing around with the release characteristics of the gate, which changes the length of the reverb release without actually changing the reverb at all. The new trigger and gate effects section is really helpful, a lot more than I thought it would be. It's great that you can really mangle the drum part without affecting the MIDI information. So if you really want a choppy or kind of, you know, gated reverb effect or electronic style effect, you can get that without having to change the duration of the MIDI information. So that ended up being super helpful. The boost mode in the compressor section, absolutely helpful. And this is so common. You get an entire mix all the way done. It's perfect. It's exactly what you want. And you're like, God, but that snare just needs a little bit more punch, or those toms need just a bit more punch to bring them forward. This is great for that and very effective. And without a doubt, I mean, the showstopper here is the new EQ. The EQ is killer. Plus, it finally works like most other EQs work, but having the real-time RTA in there finally, and having the bands make more sense. The old way that the bands used to work and their kind of odd behavior made it really tough to kind of dial in your sound for any one particular kit piece. They've really solved that problem and made this just a joy to work with. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me, you guys. I appreciate it. If this was helpful in any way, please hit the subscription and notification bells. It helps me make more videos like this, and it helps keep a channel going. Stay safe, be creative. Add something creative to the world. It could really use it. Take care. We'll catch you guys in the next video.